Om Sang Saraswati Namaha. Namaste. Namaste, everyone. Tonight, let's discuss the story of Sudarshan. Su means excellent, and darshan means the intuitive perception of the intrinsic nature, the real thing. I get to see the real thing, and Sudarshan has excellent intuitive perception. And there was once a king of Ayodhya named Pushpa. He had a dharmic son named Dhruva who upheld the traditions of the solar dynasty. Dhruva was an ideal king in every way. He was truthful, religious, and constantly engaged in seeking the welfare of his community. Under his leadership, the kingdom of Ayodhya flourished. Dhruva had 2 wives, whom he loved very greatly. The first was Manorama, the daughter of Birasena, the king of the country of Kaling. And the second was Lilavati, the daughter of Yudhajit, the king of the country of Ujjain. Both of the wives were very beautiful, and both were very much beloved by the king Dhruva. Both wives conceived nearly the same time, but Manorama was the first to give birth to a handsome son named Sudarshan. Excellent intuitive vision. Less than a month later, Lilavati gave birth to her son, whom they named Shatrujit, the victor over enemies. And Dhruva was the happiest monarch alive, and he united his family with so much love and joy. He loved his 2 wives immensely, and he loved his 2 sons equally. One day, while the children were still young, the king went hunting in the forest. He killed many wild animals fit for sacrifice: deer, elephant, boar, rabbits, rhinoceros, and in every way thoroughly enjoyed himself according to the customs of the kings of that era. While he was hunting, an enraged lion suddenly attacked him. He fought valiantly with his sword, but the lion tore at his flesh with his sharp claws. The soldier shot arrows at the lion, but by the time the lion stopped, the king had been mangled to death. The soldier shot more arrows at the lion, who was killed on the spot. Thereafter, the soldiers sent a message to the ministers, and the ministers counseled with Guru Vasishtha to install Sudarshan, the oldest son, on the throne. Immediately, both of the grandfathers, the kings Virasena and Yudhajit, came to Ayodhya along with their armies to lobby for the succession of their daughter's sons. Yudhajit accused Guru Vasishtha of conspiring with Birasena to get the throne for Sudarshan out of greed for wealth. Becoming angry at the prospect of Shatrujit's being denied the kingdom, he challenged Virasena to battle. Tributary princes came along with their armies, and the stage was set for a battle of the proportions of the Mahabharata. The nation went to war in a terrible battle of succession, and there were as many soldiers as the stars in the sky. The blood of the wounded and dead ran like a river, and there were uncountable casualties in the war. Ultimately, King Yudhajit shot an arrow which severed the head of Birasena from his body, and Shatrujit was declared the king. Hearing the news of her father's death, Manorama was filled with fright for the safety of her son. Quickly she bundled Sudarshan in ragged clothing and fled from the kingdom. They wandered in the forest for many days until they came to Chitrakoot, where they took refuge in the hermitage of the Rishi Bharadwaj. The sage Bharadwaj said, to give protection to one in distress is to gain merits even greater than those acquired by performing a sacrifice. Then, to protect one who is very much afflicted by fear for their personal safety, one who is helpless and has no other place to go, should produce even greater merits. You stay here in this ashram and raise your son. I shall assume the responsibility of your protection. Then Manorama was freed from her anxiety and dressing in the apparel of a tapaswini, like a rishipatni, a rishikanya. She began to raise and educate her son in the Muni's ashram. Meanwhile, Yudhajit installed his daughter's son upon the throne of Ayodhya and appointed loyal ministers to administrate the kingdom on behalf of the young child. He then returned to his own land in Ujjain. Some time had passed when Yudhajit learned through his spies that Manorama had been raising her son Sudarshan in Bharadwaj's ashram. He immediately set out with a great army, determined to once and for all settle the matter of the ascendancy to the throne of Ayodhya by his grandson. Yudhajit determined to kill the minor son of Manorama so that there could be no further question of a claim to the throne. With that objective in mind, he proceeded to Bharadwaj's ashram. His army encircled the hermitage with a great force, and then the king pounded on the ashram gate. "Oh, Muni, open your gate and give me Manorama and her son," bellowed the king. Then the Rishi Bharadwaj replied to Yudhajit, "O king, Manorama and her son Sudarshan have taken refuge in this ashram. He is a minor child and she has been overcome by fear. Please return to your homes and leave us to live in peace. They are no threat to you now." "I will never let them live," called Yudhajit. "If you do not give them to me willingly, then I will take them by force." "If you desire to take them by force, then there is nothing that I can do. But the result will be the same as when the king Vishwamitra tried to take the cow from Vashishta's ashram," answered the rishi. Seeing Bharadwaj's resolve, Yudhajit summoned his prime minister. "What happened to the king Vishwamitra?" he said. "My king," replied the minister, "please do not argue with the rishis. King Vishwamitra was totally destroyed when he tried to take Vashishta's cow. My king, let us return to our homes. There is no difficulty they can create now. Wait until the time is right, and then we will strike." Hearing the minister's advice, the king Yudhajit bowed down to the Guru Bharadwaj and returned to his native land. Manorama was freed from fear, and Sudarshan took his education and initiation and performed tapasya under the direction of the sages. Sudarshan became an expert in many branches of learning and received the darshan of the Divine Mother. He served his mother with great devotion and meditated along the banks of the Ganga near Chitrakoot. Sudarshan and Shashikala. The king of Benares, Subahu, had a very beautiful daughter named Shashikala, the particle of the moon. One day, Shashikala heard of a wonderful prince endowed with all auspicious qualities, as beautiful as the god of love, full of heroism and charm, living in the forest with the name of Sudarshan. Shashikala began to dream of this Prince of Peace, began to love him, and began to desire him as her husband. One day she had a dream that the Divine Mother appeared to her and said, "Ask the boon from me. Sudarshan is my devotee, and he will fulfill your desires." Shashikala awoke and her face was covered with bliss. Everyone noticed the special radiance. Her mother and friends asked her about it, but she was too modest to speak. One day, when Shashikala was sitting in a garden, she saw a sannyasi coming into the city. She went to that sadhu and requested, "Oh, noble sir, where are you coming from?" The sannyasi replied, "I am coming from the forest area of Chitrakoot, where I dwell in the ashram of the Rishi Bharadwaj. I have one errand to perform in this city." What is in the forest area of Chitrakoot which has extraordinary beauty that is worth describing? She inquired. "The most wonderful thing in that forest," he replied, "is the Prince Sudarshan, the son of Manorama, and the King Dhruvashandi. He is endowed with all the auspicious qualities, and in every way is a most fitting husband for a princess like you." Shubahu's daughter, Shashikala, became submerged in a sea of love. She could think of nothing else. She began to recite the mantra of the goddess Saraswati, "Om Sham Saraswati Namaha," and began to feel the blessings of the goddess. Sudarshan continued his tapasya and became extremely accomplished and blessed. Wherever he went in the forest, because of the power of his spiritual discipline, it seemed as though he was accompanied by a full contingent of soldiers. He became pure and peaceful, yet he projected strength and power. Still, he only used his powers for good. By living in the forest and by constantly meditating on the goddess, Sudarshan realized a greater happiness than those who obtained the sovereignty of a kingdom. Finding that his daughter Shashikala was being perplexed by love, Subahu called for the festival of her swayamvara, the ceremony of choosing her husband. When Shashikala saw the preparations being made for the ceremony, she went to her father and said, "Father, I have already seen in a dream that the Divine Mother has instructed me to marry Sudarshan, the son of Manorama, and the King Dhruvashandi, and therefore please do not make this public display." Her father became very angry and said, "Sudarshan is an unprotected minor exiled in the forest. He has no kingdom, no army, no wealth. He lives eating roots and fruits with his mother and the munis of the forest. Not only that, his grandfather Birasena was slain by Yudhajit, the king of Ujjain, and Yudhajit has vowed to kill Sudarshan at his first opportunity to prevent any controversy regarding the throne of Ayodhya. I will not permit such a marriage for my daughter." Shashikala again told her mother. The king Saryati gave his daughter Sukanya to the blind Chavanamuni as his wife. The goddess Bhagavati has already told me in a dream that Sudarshan shall be my husband. A woman can attain liberation if she surrenders herself completely to her husband. Therefore, I shall live in whatever way my husband lives. Do not deny me my dharma. Sudarshan will be my husband. Before the event of her swayamvara, Shashikala became very anxious. She summoned one Brahmin and requested him to deliver her message to Sudarshan. Please, come quickly. My father has called for my marriage betrothal, but the Divine Mother has told me clearly in a dream that I am only to marry you. By mind and word and deed, I have already surrendered to you as my husband, and with the blessings of the Divine Mother, our ultimate fulfillment is assured. Please have faith in her, at whose command exists this entire universe with all that moves and moves not, and present yourself without fail. When Sudarshan received that message from Shashikala, he asked the rishi Bharadwaj what he should do. Bharadwaj gave his blessings for Sudarshan to attend the festival, and Mother Manorama grieved with despair. You are my only son. Please do not leave me. Yudhajit has already slain my father Virasena in order to protect that kingdom, and he has vowed to slay you. You are a minor son and my only future. Please don't leave me. Whatever the Divine Mother has ordained is destined to happen, answered Sudarshan. I am the child of the Divine Mother, and I have no fear. Mother, please banish all fear from your heart. Manorama spoke again. My son, I cannot live without you. I will accompany you to the swayamvara. Manorama and Sudarshan received the blessings of saints and sages and set out to Benares. The king Shubahu welcomed them with respect and provided them with a residence as he did the other royal families. The kings were filled with wonder that Sudarshan had come alone and without fear. Yudhajit said that he would accept the princess's marriage to any other family, but if Shashikala would choose Sudarshan, she will become a widow on her very wedding day. All the kings assembled in the swayamvara hall, and Shubahu called for his daughter to come. Then Shashikala sent a message to her father. Father, I have no desire to judge the merits and demerits of many men. I have a yearning to protect my chastity and surrender myself purely to my husband. I have already understood that the Divine Mother wants me to marry Sudarshan, and I have accepted her will. Please do not make me present myself in this public hall to make a mockery of my faith by standing before all those lustful men to judge them by their appearance alone. Please call off this event and give me in marriage to Sudarshan. Then Subahu was plunged into dejection. He became filled with anxiety, thinking, all of these kings have come here with their mighty armies, looking for an excuse to start a fight. I haven't the strength to counter an offensive. Their collective numbers are much too great for my forces. Sudarshan, too, is alone, a child, without any wealth or army. How can I fulfill my daughter's request? How can a father who longs for the happiness of his daughter deny her request, which is in accordance with Dharma? Then Subahu said to the assembly of kings, O kings, my daughter has refused my request to come into the swayamvara hall, even though both her mother and I have tried every method of persuasion. I am afraid she is being troublesome to me, and she will become troublesome to yourselves as well. Nobody wants to be burdened with a quarrelsome wife. Therefore, please excuse me. I cannot force her to attend, nor can I force her to choose. I am your servant. I offer you all a portion of my wealth. Please take this as a sign of my respect and return to your homes. There was silence amidst the assembly of kings. Then arose Yudhajit, who said, O King Subahu, you have invited all these kings to attend the marriage ceremony, and now you are going to give your daughter to that poor, homeless Sudarshan? What kind of a fool are you to make such a decision? What an insult to all these royal families assembled here, that you should choose an alliance with this minor child who has no army, who is alone, with no wealth or strength, over the extended hand of friendship of more powerful monarchs. Do not be a fool. Give your daughter to my grandson Shatrujit, and we will have dominion across the entire north of India. I have already vowed to kill Sudarshan, and if you persist in this ridiculous desire to make your daughter an early widow, then I will kill you as well. Subahu went with his wife, and they tried to explain the situation to Shashikala. Daughter, the kings are enraged at what they perceive to be a grave insult. They are heavily armed and are looking for some pretext to come to battle. We are in great difficulty. We do not have sufficient force to subdue their armies. Often members of the royal families have been given in marriage to assist in political alliances. Could you help us out by choosing someone else? Otherwise, there is going to be bloodshed. Or let me make a contest of strength or valor, so that the victor may marry you. In that case, the best man will win, and we will certainly avert calamity. The determined Shashikala replied, Father, what you propose is immoral. In my heart, my marriage has already been consummated. What you ask is that I commit adultery. Please do not make me think of such a thing. Our Dharma instructs that chastity and marital fidelity are values to be respected. Adultery is not condoned for anyone. Then why, again and again, are you counseling me to abandon my path of Dharma? Please, Father, put the kings off on some pretext until tomorrow, and then perform my marriage tonight with Sudarshan. Whatever the Divine Mother has planned for us, I will accept. If I am meant to live as a hermit in the forest, then I shall do so. If the goddess wants my husband be slain in battle with his relatives, then I shall sacrifice my life as well. If it is meant that we become a royal family, then whatever the goddess will decree, that I shall accept. Hearing his daughter's obstinate resolve, Subahu was filled with wonder at her faith, and trusting his daughter in his heart, he determined to fulfill her desire. He returned to the kings in the assembly hall and said, Kings, my daughter will not come today to be present in this assembly. Please, all of you take your food and enjoy our hospitality. Please return tomorrow, and together we shall decide on a contest that will allow the worthiest man to win the bride. All of the kings agreed and returned to their respective accommodations. Meanwhile, the king Subahu began to celebrate the marriage of his daughter. Throughout the night, he made the offerings of puja, accompanied by the recitation of Sanskrit texts by learned Brahmins, and gave his daughter, the beautiful Shashikala, to Sudarshan. The bride was radiant like a second Lakshmi, and all were filled with joy and delight. When the marriage was completed, Subahu addressed Manorama. "O royal daughter, I now have become your servant. Please accept the half of my kingdom and live here with your son and daughter-in-law." By performing this marriage according to the will of God, the other kings have become our enemies. Please stay here in Benares and let me protect you. Manorama replied, "O king, no words can express the joy of my heart at your generosity. No other king would have been so subservient to the will of God as to give his beautiful daughter to my impoverished son. But the rishis of the forest have proclaimed that my son will become the king of Ayodhya. And therefore, let us have faith in the Divine Mother and allow events to unfold according to her will." In the morning, the other kings learned that the marriage had been consummated. And in great anger, they went out from the city to take counsel with one another. Yudhajit told the kings, "No one can blame me now. Subahu lied to us. He cheated and disgraced us. Now I will certainly kill Sudarshan and Subahu. I will take that Shashikala to give to my grandson for a wife, and all of you can plunder the kingdom." The kings determined to block Sudarshan's route when he would try to leave the city, to kill him and steal away his wife. Subahu learned of the plot to attack and tried his best to keep Sudarshan in Benares. Then Sudarshan told his father-in-law, "Please grant us leave to fulfill the Divine Mother's will." Sudarshan took his mother and his new bride, Shashikala, upon his chariot and embarked upon the journey. He had decided to return to the ashram of Rishi Bharadwaj to take his blessings and then proceed as he was instructed. Subahu, fearing for his daughter's life, followed behind with his army. Knowing no fear, Sudarshan began to approach the place of ambush. He was reciting the mantra of the goddess. Ring, 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 ring. Yudhajit and Satrudrit surrounded the advancing chariot with their great armies and began firing arrows and weapons. Just then, the Devi Bhagavati Chandi appeared. She was sitting upon her lion, holding various weapons in her hands. The kings were struck with awe. They had never seen such a sight before as this wonderfully beautiful lady riding on a lion. The lion roared, and the elephants of their armies became stricken with fear. Sudarshan drove his chariot right through the ranks of soldiers. "Stop them!" commanded Yudhajit. "Are you going to let them go because you're afraid of one lady mounted upon a lion? They have insulted all the kings, and I have vowed to kill them." Yudhajit and Satrujit pursued Sudarshan's chariot, firing their weapons, while the other kings and soldiers looked on in amazement. Sudarshan fired his arrows in return, which cut the enemy's arrows to pieces. When the fighting grew intense, the Divine Mother became angry. She began to fight with all of her weapons. She shot her arrows at Yudhajit and Satrujit, and both fell from their chariots to their death. Then Shubahu, along with the assembled kings, began to sing a hymn of praise to the Divine Mother. He praised her with most fervent devotion. The Mother of the Universe was pleased with him and gave her blessings. O King, as long as the earth remains, the city of Benares shall remain. And as long as the city of Benares stands, I shall never leave that place. Sudarshan asked the mother, how shall I serve you? And the goddess ordered him, become the king of Ayodhya and govern the country of your ancestors. Conduct my worship with full devotion, and I will never forsake you. Then Sudarshan was crowned king of Ayodhya, and he, along with his wife Shashikala and his mother Manorama, returned to govern the country of his ancestors. He established the worship of the Divine Mother and performed her discipline regularly with full devotion. Once again, Ayodhya became the place without war. Subahu returned to Benares and began to worship the Divine Mother with his greatest devotion so that the goddess would always remain in Benares. And that's why even today, the Divine Mother's presence is all throughout Benares and eternally will remain in Benares because of Shubahu and his faith in his daughter Shashikala and her love for her husband Sudarshan. The story of Satyabrat. This is a long story. Maybe we'll save this for our next time. Let's ask if there are any questions about Sudarshan, Subahu, Shashikala, Manorama, any of the other characters in this story.
Swamiji, the fact that she just thought about him all the time, how does that constitute consummation of marriage?
She accepted him as her beloved in her heart, and for her, the marriage was consummated. She surrendered herself to him. Just hearing about the excellent intuitive vision of this young man who is strong and beautiful and living a dharmic life, what more would she want from her husband? Why wouldn't she surrender to him? And once she surrendered to that vision, to that concept, she no longer thought that she could marry another. Have you any questions?
Swamiji, Kumari had a question about the swayamvara practice of
Yes,
swayamvara.
please.
She said that in ancient India, it seemed like there was a lot of freedom for women to make their own choices. What happened along the way?
Not only in ancient India, but all the way up until the Mughal Empire, there was tremendous freedom, not only for women to make their own choices, but for women to become goddesses, women to become rishis, and they became seers. They were respected. We have so many stories of Gargi, Moitri, Ahalya, not just because of their wifely devotion, but because of their sadhana and tapasya. But as the Mughal Empire took foot, it started with Mahmud Ghaznavi. Muhammad Ghaznavi came from Afghanistan over the Khyber Pass about 1000 AD, and by 1200 AD, the Sultanate of Delhi was established. And from that period of time, Sharia became the law. And any woman who was uncovered was open, free game. She was open to attack. She was inviting attack to herself, so that even the Hindu women began to wear a gumni, or they would wear, in some way they would cover their heads, either with the achal of their sari, or they would wear a special covering cloth or a headscarf. So in this way, they covered themselves in modesty to protect themselves from the law of Sharia, which says that any woman exposing herself is inviting attack. And that is the interpretation of Sharia. If a woman excites the passions within a man, it's her fault. And she is to be penalized and punished, and just recently stoned to death. So in this period of history, the customs changed. You see many of the sculptures and the temple sculptures, the scenes of everyday life are shown with both men and women just wearing something around their waist and naked on the top and covered with ornaments and jewelry. There was no question of shame or modesty until the Mughal Empire came. So, and then along with that, all of the traditions began to shift, and now they are shifting back the other way. And the Devi Bhagavatam, it says at the end of the Kali Yuga, all the men will stand with folded hands in fear of their wives. The wives will conspire with their brothers and brothers-in-laws, and they will rule the household. And so the pendulum is swinging back. Are there other questions?
Swamiji, Nanda from San Jose has a question. How is Shashikala's example relevant in today's world?
Absolutely, Nanda. We can say very nicely, if we choose, that dharma, to choose our husband and say, that is the relationship for me. But that presupposes that our both partners are mutually and reciprocally contributing to the edification of the partnership. It does not mean that the woman will always be a servant and the man will always be a master, but where there is mutual and reciprocal respect and edification of a partnership, then certainly we should all endeavor to strive to maintain that ideal of fidelity, that ideal of loyalty, those ideals of perfection where we stand by our commitment. But that assumes that both partners are honoring their commitment. You can't have a partnership with only one. So again, we are required to use our discrimination when we apply the tenets of these stories.
She's asking, Nanda asks a connected question. How can a woman of this era inspire her husband to be Lord Shiva?
By being the divine mother. The only way Lord Shiva became Lord Shiva was by accepting her hand in marriage. It says so in the Devi Aparata Shamapana Stotram at the end of the Chandi. What is the cause of Shiva's greatness? He accepted your hand in marriage, and that's what made him great. He had to live up to the ideals of the Lord of the universe once he was married to the goddess of the universe. Once he accepted the Divine Mother into his life, he continually received inspiration and understanding and appreciation, which inspired within him the most noble conduct.
Swamiji, Kumari is asking, what yuga were Vashishta and Vishwamitra in? Is there a relationship between the greater number of rishis meditating in earlier yugas and the decline of dharma in later yugas?
Kumari Mom, Vashishta and Vishwamitra are eternal. And they were there from the beginning of the creation when Brahma created the seven rishis of each creation Vashishta and Vishwamitra. Vashishta was amongst them, and Vishwamitra joined them through his tapasya. Now they are both rishis, and they see again as Ishvara sees, without limitation, so they are not confined to any time zone. They're not limited. However, there has been a consistent decline of dharma because more and more rishis are becoming greater, more and more obscure. And even though they are eternal, they are meditating in their own place, in their own way. Not all of them are on the web with a daily broadcast. Some of them have gone into their inner sanctuary, and they are sitting there unrecognized. And therefore, there's a greater need for more inspiration to come into the creation.
Swamiji, a question from Nilima from New Delhi.
Namaste, Nilima.
Why are gods such as Indra shown to be possessing weaknesses of human emotions? This is reflected in most mythological stories.
Nilima, Indra rules the mind, and the mind is batakne wala. He's ghumne wala. He's always in confusion. So sometimes the mind is steadfast in defining the Dharma, and sometimes the mind says, wait, what about me? And so Indra has both the qualities, because he is a very jealous individual. He doesn't want anyone else to rule the mind. He wants the mind to be ruled by divinity, by all the gods, by all the purest aspirations of existence. So then he says, I don't want any Ashura to do tapasya and conquer the mind, and conquer my throne, take over heaven. Where else will we go? Where will divinity go when the Asuras, the demons, the negativities take over heaven? They'll inspire division and individuality. Whereas here I am inspiring unity and purity and clarity. I only lose that inspiration when I see someone trying to push me out of heaven. So Nilima, this is why some commentators are really portraying the negative without really accenting the positive. Ind means to rule. And Indra, who illuminates rule, who guides. And that's why we call him, in our translations, the rule of the pure, because deep means to shine. Dipya means shining. And Devo means the shining ones. They're the gods, the shining ones, the illuminated ones, the examples of purity and clarity. Now, Indra is the ruler of the gods. So he's the ruler of the pure, and he rules over all of these shining examples of purity and clarity, and he tries to inspire all to come to purity and clarity. Make yajnas, make sacrifice, do worship, do puja. Don't go worshipping other Asuras. And that's why he's jealous. He says to his devotees, stay on the path of divinity. Come to me, and you'll go to the heaven, and you'll reap the rewards of a pure mind and a divine mind, and you'll become illuminated, and you'll live with illuminated beings with a continual inspiration. If you follow the path of the Asuras and you go to the worldliness and you get bound by objects of attachment and relationships of attachment, and then you're subject to the waves of pleasure and pain and sukh and dukh and gurtarahenge, and it's not going to be fun for you after a while. That's why I'm trying to protect my devotees. I'm going to put obstacles in the path of anyone who wants to upset the balance of heaven. And that's why, Nilima, he's portrayed that way because that's the allegory of the story. But think about the meaning of these names. Think about the meaning of these gods. How do they live in heaven if they're not the purest ideals of perfection that we humans can aspire to achieve? And that's who they are.
Swamiji, question from Wendy from New Jersey.
Namaste, Wendy Ma.
Wendy is saying when Vishwarath realized his wrongs, he said he could practice tapasya if he would be spared. This is a common theme throughout many scriptures. How do we take this lesson into our own lives? Do we need to practice tapasya when we err in our ways? How do we decide what kind of tapasya to do and for how long? We read of how others are practicing austerities for very long periods of time, sometimes thousands of years. Thank you, Swamiji.
Wow, Wendy Ma, we don't need to do tapasya only when we do something wrong. We need to do tapasya in order to do something right. In fact, of all the things that we could do on this earth, while we are manifested in a human body, tapasya is the one thing that's not going to get us in any more trouble than we're already in. So therefore, we want to do tapasya as much as we can. Now, Vishwarath said, "If you spare me, I will do tapasya." He was saying that Vashishta's soldiers or Nandi's soldiers were about to kill him. They were chasing him around the earth. He said, "I know now that the power of a sword is worthless compared to the spiritual power of a rishi. And now let me explore the depths of spirituality. Let me do tapasya." Now, how do we choose tapasya? We see an example, Wendy, and we say, "Gee, those are neat people doing neat things. I want to inculcate their characteristics, their qualities. I want to be like that." Now, what did they do, or what are they doing to be like that? And now we start taking one by one. Well, Mom cooks like that. And she sings like that. And she chants like that. And she puts her flowers like that. And she walks with a grace like that. And I like that grace. I'd like to worship that way. I'd like to sing that way. I'd like to love God with every breath and renounce all of my selfishness just like she does. So when we find an example and we make ourselves into a disciple of that example, we follow the example and see, how can I do that myself in my way, in my circumstances? And we try to come closer and closer to becoming the example. And one day, somebody follows our example. Maybe.
Nanda is asking, Vishwanath did a lot of tapasya, but his motive was not so pure. He wanted to be one up on Vashishta, or so it seems to me. Will tapasya done without pure motives bear good fruit? Thank you.
Nandama, it has the capacity. Every tapasya will bear some fruit. And the more the tapasya, the greater the fruit. And as you do the tapasya, even if we begin the tapasya from impure or selfish motivation, as we are performing, after some time, the motive becomes more pure and more pure and more pure until we are actually sadhus. And that's the objective. Remember, Mother told the story of pretending to be the sadhu. And he pretended and pretended and pretended until he became the sadhu. There's a possibility, if we perform tapasya, even from impure motives in the beginning, that those motives will change and it'll become a way of life.
Swamiji, Kumari asks, Vishwamitra brought the Gayatri to mankind. What was the realization that mankind got as a result of knowing the Gayatri mantra?
Kumari Marimam, the realization is that I always need more wisdom, and there is no end to wisdom. There is no circumstance that I cannot that I cannot learn from, and therefore I am always a student. I can learn from everyone and everything in every time and every place, all circumstances, and therefore what I want to look for in my life and interaction is, what is the lesson for me? I'm not interested in correcting you. I want to know what's the lesson for me. How can I make myself better because of having this experience? You will get the fruit of your karma. I'm not concerned. But the lesson from the Gayatri is, I need wisdom always and in every circumstance, and there is no circumstance in which I do not need wisdom. So please, wisdom, don't abandon me.
Swamiji, Usha from Canada.
Namaste, Ushama.
Swamiji, is the word tapasya sometimes used for sitting in meditation also?
It is. Ushama, tapasya has many forms. The actual etymology of the word is to add heat. Do you know, wherever there is friction, there's heat. Wherever there's movement, there's friction. Wherever there's a vibration, there's a movement. Even the most subtle vibration is adding heat. And therefore the Rig Veda says, Tapasya deva devato argo ayam. From tapasya, of tapasya, the devas originally became devas. All the gods became shining, illuminated, divine beings from tapasya. Taposhi sarvam pratishtitam tasmat tapa sreshta. Taposi, within tapasya, is this entire pratishtitam, everything that is established, everything that is created, is constantly residing in tapasya. Tasmat, therefore, tapaha, do your tapasya. Add the heat. Sresht, and you will realize the ultimate. Ushama, everyone and everything is doing tapasya in every circumstance in the perception of a seer. Now there are the rest of us who say, oh, she's sitting, therefore she's doing tapasya. She's meditating, therefore she's doing tapasya. He is sitting next to the fire, and it looks like it's hot over there. Therefore, he's doing tapasya. We are looking at the forms of tapasya. Actually, we could describe it a little more efficiently as a premeditated form of worship designed to purify ourselves. The tap, the heat, is purification. And we are trying to purify ourselves through motivated action. Any action which makes us break into a sweat, which adds heat, which gives us purity, which we are doing for the purpose of becoming more pure, is tapasya.
Swamiji, does adding heat means we shouldn't like it?
No, we should like it. The hotter, the better. The more heat we add, the greater the tapasya, the greater the purification. We are adding heat, that means that we are adding greater purity. Because remember, of the four elements, earth, water, air, and fire, fire is the one that can never be impure. You can have foul earth, you can have polluted water, you can have disgusting air, but you cannot have an impure fire. If fire is the purifier, It always purifies. So adding heat means adding greater clarity, adding greater purification, adding greater, bringing us closer to becoming a shining one.
Swamiji, Michael has a question from Colorado. It sounds like our basic thoughts that come and go, that create focus on anything, is tapasya?
Michael, Baba, that is true. Namaste, Karen Ma. But in addition to any thoughts that we focus upon that gives us clarity, we must discriminate which thoughts are the pure thoughts that will take us closer to God and which thoughts are the tangents which will take us more to the world. And this discrimination, this distinction gives us the motivation to practice tapasya with a sankalpa. I have a motivation, I have a definition, I have defined the activity that we will perform in order to focus our awareness in an attitude of surrender so we become closer and closer to God. And not just any thought, it could be any thought if it's a pure one. If you and your beautiful wife are just so enamored of divinity that your every thought takes you closer to the divine, then yes, every thought is a pure thought, and every thought is tapasya. If you happen to be somewhat more like the rest of us, sometimes we think about divinity, and sometimes we think about what we've got to do in the world in order to come back to think about divinity again. Om Sam Saraswati Namaha. Namaste.